In this video, we're going to cover low-hanging fruit that Fdev could work on that wouldn't take very many resources, if much at all, from their other projects and would pay off massive dividends in the community to start winning some of that goodwill back. Now, this video is kind of a continuation of the past video I did, Elite Dangerous backed into a corner. I'll hit you with the TLDR so you don't have to go back to watch it, but if you do want to go back and watch it, I'll put a card in the top right hand corner of the screen. But basically, I just feel like Fdev's in a little bit of a weird spot where they can't really add content to Odyssey without announcing the console launch or what's going on with that. So while they're waiting to say what's going on with the console, I think the best way that they can start winning back the community is by hitting low-hanging fruit that wouldn't take very many resources and affect everyone. So this would be updates that would affect both Horizons and Odyssey to start winning the goodwill of the players back. Now, I think there's some pretty big issues that they could work on, and it just wouldn't take that many resources, like I said before, hitting low-hanging fruit. And one of the biggest things that has a ton of issues is engineering. And I think engineering probably would benefit from a complete rework, but at this point that's a lot of work and effort. And so I think there's a lot of small things that they could do that would just make quality of life with engineering significantly better without having to spend a ton of dev time and resources on it. Now, there are kind of two main overarching issues with engineering, and one is balance and the other is kind of quality of life and like the grind and stuff like that under quality of life. And I think the balance where the game really could use a lot of balancing changes with engineering. I think that's a huge project and that it's probably not feasible for them to do right now. So I'm going to focus more on the quality of life things in this video because I think they can do a lot of that without spending too many like development resources on it, and it would pay back major dividends. Now, the grind issue with engineering is pretty much flawed from the ground up, and I do not think they are going to be able to fix it completely, but they could definitely make some small changes that would just make it way easier and better to use and more convenient. Some of these that could make a huge difference is just make it so that the materials that you gather for engineering aren't capped, so you don't have to worry about, oh man, I got to go trade all these resources off. You could just grab a whole bunch of them at once and just not worry about it. Or if you're mining or gathering materials without actually grinding towards it, you could just continually grab them and then you could use those to help you engineer. I think that would be a major benefit, and that would literally just take the cap off of materials. Super easy for them to address and quick, and I think it would make a lot bigger difference than a lot of people think. Another pretty cool thing that they could do without hardly any work is they could just make it so that it's not as brutal to trade resources, because right now, if you need tier 5s, it's like at the very best trade, you're getting one of the tier 5s that you need for 6 other materials, which is pretty brutal, and you burn through materials super fast. So just making it so that it's less brutal to trade resources would also help with engineering quite a bit as well. Also, another couple cool options that they could do is when you are turning in bounties or exploration data, you'd be able to trade that for materials. That'd be a pretty cool option. I'm not sure if they do that. They could also increase the amount of materials you get for picking up items. Like, I know it originally went from 1 to 3, but you could push it up to 5. I mean, right now, like, I wouldn't even mind if they threw it up to 10, honestly. Also, being able to break down your previously engineered modules to get back some of the materials would be awesome. Like, this might only be me, but I made quite a few mistakes when engineering, so I just have a ton of modules laying around that I don't want to sell because I have a ton of time and materials into engineering them, and I just can't bring myself to sell them. So being able to break down some of these modules that you just don't use anymore, or you made a mistake when you were engineering it and you just don't want to break it down, get some of those mats back from your time invested would also be an awesome option to have in Elite Dangerous. Also, another thing that would be super easy for them to do is, instead of only being able to have one pin blueprint that you can engineer anywhere, just let me engineer anywhere in the galaxy. It's such a time waster to have to go back to the engineer anytime I want to throw experimental effects or I want to engineer something that isn't my pinned blueprint. It's frustrating. It's just a time sink. There's no real point. They already have it in there so that they have a remote workshop. Just unlock everything in the remote workshop. So if I unlock that engineer and level it all the way up, I'll be able to completely engineer anything from anywhere in the galaxy. That just seems obvious. It's really frustrating that they haven't done something like this right now, because it's just a pointless time sink at this point. And talking about the engineers, unlocking engineers is extremely frustrating. Some of them are kind of cool, but for the most part, it's just a frustrating experience and a massive grind to unlock them. I would really like to see I think all the engineers have 2 different tasks that you have to do to unlock them. I'd like to see that knocked down to 1, and I would also like to see some of these engineers just get rid of like the useless engineers, like maybe Marco Quint, so that you don't have to go level up the person so you can hear about Marco Quint, so you can unlock Marco Quint to be able to unlock the next guy, right? Because it's just a pointless speed bump and a time waste. I would just like to see that streamlined a little bit better and a little bit easier to unlock them for the new players. And this is one of those topics that really hits home for me because everybody that I played the game with, the guy that got me into the game, they all quit when engineers came out and during this unlock grind period. They never got a fully engineered ship because they just couldn't bring themselves to unlock some of these engineers, and it's a super frustrating process. So I would really like to see this one addressed by Fdev. That's a lot of the things I have to say about engineering. There could be some more drastic changes. I don't know. It'd be cool, like, if you unlocked a module once, you just had access to that module. I don't know if FDev would ever do that, but that would be cool and something I'll be totally on board with. But the next topic that we're going to move into is UI changes. Now, this is kind of a weird topic because they really did change up the UI quite a bit for Odyssey. But I think there's still some things that they could add that would be quality of life features without having to completely redesign the UI. And some of these things could be just when the Odyssey UI comes over to Horizons could be addressed. But there are definitely quite a few UI issues that I would like to see. The first one I would really like to see is I would like to see what engineering modifications I have on my module without having to click multiple times. The video I'm showing in the background right now is me having to deal with that and kind of the annoyance that is caused by this. And it's really annoying because if you go to your stored modules, you can see what engineering modifications they have on there. So I would just like to see that screen ported over to when I'm looking at my ship. So it's something that's already in the game and would be nice if it was just already there. Another thing is when I'm moving modules around from one ship to another ship, it's super annoying because I have to, like, say I'm in my Federal Assault ship and I need something off of my Chieftain. Well, then I have to store my Federal Assault ship, pull out my Chieftain, store the module off my Chieftain that I want to use. Then I have to switch back to my Federal Assault ship and then put that module on my ship. I would like just the option to be able to pull modules straight off whatever ship I'm trying to pull it off and throw it on my ship without having to switch between ships and that whole annoyance. Another thing that would be really great with the outfitting is if I could save ship builds. And as long as I have all the modules in the location, whether they are on other ships or in my stored modules, just be able to click, hey, I want to use this ship build. And it just pull all the modules and put them on the ship automatically. That would be awesome. There's quite a few things that this would be great for. Like if I've taken a break from the game and I can't remember what a good build is or builds that I like, I could just already have saved builds for certain ships that I like and want to use without having me to go to my saved builds on Coriolis or look at old notes or old videos that I watched to make these builds or whatever I did to make that build and try to figure out what I was doing. Now, this might not be a problem if you only have 1 or 2 builds, but I think I have like 14 or 15 engineered ships at this point, and it gets in a bunch of random different builds for the same ship. And so it gets really confusing going through all my modules and trying to figure out what build I'm using. So it'd be super handy coming back to the game and just having saved ship builds so I know exactly what's going on. Another thing that this would be fantastic for is saving on engineered modules, because I have a ton of duplicate engineered modules just because of how annoying it is to switch a module from one ship to another ship. Like I have so many engineered size 5 frameshift drives just because switching them between different ships is super frustrating. So I would prefer not to do that a lot, but if I just had a saved ship build feature or build a saved ship, I wouldn't need nearly as many engineered size 5 frameshift drives because I could just click the hey, build the ship out for me and have it on that ship, you know. So I think this would also help with the engineering grind because you wouldn't need to make as many duplicate modules for your ships. Let's jump into the bookmarks, which this is one that I think people have just been wanting forever, and it's so frustrating because we have been using bookmarks for favorite bookmarks and stuff like that, and folders and being able to share them since the Internet Explorer has been around. And so in 2022, it's so frustrating in Elite Dangerous when I can't make folders for my bookmarks or share bookmarks that I want to show my friends, or like, hey, go here to gather engineering material. I have to tell them the system. They have to go type it into their galaxy map. It would just be so much nicer if I could just share it. or something where I could just share it with my wing, be like, hey, yeah, here, go here, or whatever. Like something like that just seems so simple and would be so nice and such an obvious choice, and the player base has been complaining about it for such a long time. Fdev really should look into doing some stuff like this. Now, in the previous video, I kind of touched on hull tanks not really being viable versus shield tanks in the game currently, and I think a couple people were a little bit confused on this topic, so I'm going to try and communicate it better so hopefully everyone can understand. I'm going to throw up some pictures in the background from Coriolis to kind of show my point, and I will link all the builds I used in the description below so you can go double check it out for yourself. But anyway, like what I'm talking about when I'm saying hull tanks aren't really viable against shield tanks. Let's take the FDL and put it up against some hull tanks. The FDL is a shield tank mostly, and we're going to throw it up against the Federal Assault Ship and the Chieftain, which are both hull tanks. And so looking at these numbers that I'm showing on the screen, or the screen from Coriolis, like if you look at the defensive numbers, and this is the Federal Assault Ship versus the FDL. And as you can see, the shields will hold for 7 seconds against the FDL, and the armor will hold for 1 minute and 42. Now, if we bump over to offense, which is the next picture against that, it will remove the shields in 3 minutes and 39 seconds, and will remove armor in 38 seconds. Now, you can see that the shields of the FDL will hold for significantly longer than the shields of the FDL, or the Federal Assault Ship, and its armor put together. And not to mention, when you're hitting the shields of the Fer-de-Lance, you're not doing any module damage. Your guns aren't getting messed up. Your power plant's not getting messed up. Stuff that's your distributor's not getting messed up. So while you're hull tanking in the Federal Assault Ship, you are getting damage on your weapons. So the shield tanks have a double advantage here, where their shields are holding for longer than the armor and shields of hull tanks, and also their modules aren't taking damage, so they don't have to worry about guns stopping to work. They don't have to worry about their power plant being shut off. They don't have to worry about their frameshift drive getting shot out so they can't get away. They don't have to worry about any of these things happening to them, and they also have a major advantage over how long it takes their shields to come off versus the shields and hull of shield tanks. Now, I will throw up the Chieftain's stats, and we can see that it's a similar situation. As you can see in the Chieftain situation, it's a fairly similar situation, except the Chieftain shields holds for twice as long, 14 seconds, and its armor holds for less than the Federal Assault Ship. Now, I know these numbers aren't everything, but if you're considering these are all medium fighters, and the time to kill on the hull tanks is significantly less than the time to kill on a Fer-de-Lance, and with all the like even with the some maneuverability and stuff like that, you're going to have a massive advantage with an FDL over any hull tank. And that's kind of the problem, where it's just like, why would I ever try to take out anything but the FDL to go do PvP in if I'm going to be at such a major disadvantage when I do it? And kind of the same goes for PvE, because you can sit out there with a hull tank Fer-de-Lance, or a shield tank, sorry, not hull tank, and just not have to worry about anything PvE, where if you're hull tanking and anything else, you have to worry about your guns going offline and all this other stuff. And they're just not a great option compared to the shield tanks and how OP they are in the current state of the game. So I'd like to see that balance addressed. Here's a picture of the Chieftain's offensive numbers, and again, you can see it's a similar case with the Federal Assault Ship. Is the Chieftain lasts, between its shields and its hull, lasts significantly less time than just the shields of the FDL. And like, if you get into like looking at the numbers, the FDL shields have almost double the amount of time as the Chieftain or the Federal Assault Ship. So it's this crazy unbalanced thing where you have double the lifespan of just the shields in the Fer-de-Lance over either the Chieftain or the Federal Assault Ship. So it's just completely unbalanced, and I think this needs to be addressed at some point. And that's mostly just because it creates for a very boring meta where there's only really one option. So anybody that's out there wanting to do PvP or anything like that is just going to take the Fer-de-Lance if they're taking it somewhat seriously. You have a much better advantage doing PvE with the Fer-de-Lance out of any of these ships, and it's just kind of boring. Even though I know that the larger ships have their place and some of the smaller ships if you're messing around, but just from the standpoint of like meta ships to do, only having one is very boring. And this is, if they go ahead and change this up, it could shake up the meta and make stuff a lot more interesting and a lot more fun. So I think that's another low-hanging fruit that they could hit, is just the balance of like hull tanks and stuff like that. Another issue that Elite Dangerous has is the constant use of third-party tools. Now, I don't expect them being able to implement all the stuff that third-party tools do in a reasonable amount of time or without having to use a ton of dev resources, but in the short term they could really just add a browser in game so that you wouldn't have to leave the game to look up third-party tools. This would be awesome for anybody without a second monitor, anybody playing on console, or anybody playing in VR, because they wouldn't have to get out of the experience or what they are doing. They would just be able to stay in game and look up these third-party tools. So I think that would be a huge thing to add to the game, which would really improve a lot of stuff, or just the kind of convenience for a lot of people. Now, this is a pretty small nitpick, but it is something that has really bugged me since I started kind of playing again a little bit to get ready for this video and kind of figure out some small, easy complaints that they could fix. Is the thrust for your forward and rear thrust does not have an analog option. It's just either on or off. And after playing Star Citizen and having an analog option for my thrust, it is really hard to come back to Elite Dangerous and play, because that was really a game changer for my ability to fly in Star Citizen, is when I started figuring out how to use that and have thrust control and stuff like that. So just making the thrust option in Elite Dangerous have an analog option would be super nice. But I understand it's a pretty small one. It probably doesn't affect a whole bunch of people. But at the same time, I think it'd be super easy for them to do, and I would really like it if they did that. Now, I haven't been playing Elite Dangerous a whole lot this year, and so there's going to be quite a few things I forgot. And on top of that, I'm not really much of an explorer in Elite Dangerous. I'm not much of a trader. I haven't mined in Elite Dangerous in forever. So being mostly a combat-oriented pilot in this game and stuff like that, there's going to be a ton of things I missed. And so I really want you guys to chime up in the comments and let me know things I've missed or things I should look into or research. And I think I'm going to do a community video of all the stuff I missed, because I bet you I missed a ton of easy things that Fdev could do just to make the game much significantly more convenient. And I want to hear you guys' suggestions. I want to throw in a video. As an example, we had Kyle give a suggestion in the comments that he wants for explorers to have the option to route through unexplored space, like unexplored systems. And I think that's a really cool option, because if you want to go check out unexplored systems on the way out to Colonia, it is very difficult to do that, or very inconvenient to be able to do that. Where if you had this button, you could just be hitting unexplored, or a thing where it tried to calculate your route through unexplored systems. You could be going the whole way up to Colonia, hitting a whole bunch of brand new systems and getting your name on those systems and planets and stuff like that. So that'd be an awesome suggestion. So thank you, Kyle, for suggesting that. And I want to hear what all your guys' suggestions are in the comments below. And I will try to make a video of the community suggestions for low-hanging fruit that Fdev could hit to start winning back the community. Anyway, thank you all for watching this video.